Section 1. A Voice from the Past. Imagine you receive a letter from a man on death row. He is not a criminal in the way we might think. He is a leader, a teacher, a person of deep conviction. His crime was his faith. This man knows he is going to die a brutal death in a Roman arena. Yet, his letters are not filled with despair or fear. Instead, they burn with a passionate fire. He writes about unity truth, the meaning of suffering. He urges his followers to stand firm, to love one another, to hold on to their beliefs no matter the cost. This is the story of Ignatius of Antioch, a man whose voice echoes through nearly 2,000 years of history, speaking to us from the edge of his own grave. His words offer a rare window into a forgotten world. We can see the early Christian church not as a powerful institution, but as a small, scattered community. It was a group of people struggling to define itself. They faced persecution from the outside and division from within. Ignatius lived in this turbulent time, at the very beginning of the 2nd century. He was a bishop, a leader responsible for guiding his flock through these dangerous waters. His letters were not abstract theological treatises. They were urgent messages written on the move, sent to real people facing real problems. They show us the hopes, fears, beliefs of Christians just a few generations after Jesus. Why should we care about this man and his ancient letters today? The answer is simple. Ignatius helps us understand the roots of Christianity. His ideas about church structure, the importance of unity, and the nature of martyrdom became foundational. He was one of the first voices to argue for a single bishop leading each city's church, a model that would come to dominate Christian organization for centuries. He wrestled with questions that are still relevant. How do we maintain unity in the face of disagreement? What does it mean to be a person of faith in a hostile world? His story is not just about the past. It is about the enduring human search for meaning and purpose. His life and death represent a powerful testament to the courage of conviction. Ignatius was not a distant philosopher writing from a comfortable study. He was a man walking toward his own execution. He believed his death would be his final and most important sermon. It would be a witness, a martyrdom that would imitate the suffering of Christ and inspire others to remain steadfast. By studying his journey, we are not just learning historical facts. We are engaging with a profound human story of faith, sacrifice, and the enduring power of ideas. His journey to Rome is a journey into the heart of what it meant to be an early Christian. Section 2. The Path We Will Walk. This essay will follow the path of Ignatius. We will walk with him on his final journey, from his arrest in Syria to his death in the great city of Rome. Our timeline will be our guide. We will see how each event led to a clear outcome, a payoff for the future of the Christian faith. We will start with his early life, his role as a bishop in the city of Antioch. We will explore the world he inhabited, the Roman Empire at its peak, followers of Jesus, a small and often misunderstood minority. This context is crucial to understanding his challenges. From there, his most important legacy, his letters. 7 of these letters survived. They are a treasure trove of information. We'll summarize the main themes of each: unity, warning against false teachers, obey local leaders, especially bishops, short quotes from his own hand. Through his words, his theological priorities emerge. Next, the human story, his arrest, his long journey to Rome. Not a quick trip, a slow, deliberate procession. He met Christians in several cities along the way. It was during this journey that he wrote his famous letters. We'll follow him town to town, see the people he met, hear the messages he delivered, focus on human details, emotions, the profound sense of purpose that drove him. This connects his theology of suffering to lived experience, beliefs forged in the fire of his impending death. Finally, examine his legacy, how his ideas shaped the church. Letters circulated and were treasured. Later writers, like Polycarp, built on his ideas. Unity under a single bishop changed church structure. His embrace of martyrdom became a model. By the end, you'll understand who Ignatius was, and why his story of truth, trials, and legacy still matters. Table of contents. Part 2, Act 1, Early Life and Role in the Church section. 1. A bishop in a bustling city. Section 2. A church under pressure. Section 3. The rise of false teachings. Section 1. A bishop in a bustling city. We know very little about the early life of Ignatius. History does not record his birth, his family, or his education. His story begins when he is already a man of great importance. He was the Bishop of Antioch, one of the largest and most significant cities in the entire Roman Empire. Located in modern-day Turkey, Antioch was a crossroads of culture, trade, and ideas. It was a place where people from all over the world came together. It was also one of the earliest centers of Christianity. The book of Acts tells us that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians in this very city. This was the vibrant and complex world that Ignatius was chosen to lead. As bishop, Ignatius was the shepherd of his flock. His job was to guide, protect, and teach the Christian community in Antioch. In the late 1st and early 2nd century, the role of a bishop was still taking shape. It was not yet the powerful formal position it would become hundreds of years later. Instead, a bishop was more like a father figure to his community. He was the main teacher, the one who presided over important rituals like baptism and the Eucharist, which is the shared meal of bread and wine. He was also the person responsible for maintaining order and unity among the believers, a task that was becoming increasingly difficult. Ignatius is sometimes called Theophorus, which means God-bearer. This name reflects the deep spirituality that people saw in him. He was not just an administrator. He was a man who seemed to carry the presence of God with him. This spiritual authority was essential for his role. In a time before written creeds and official church law, the personal character and holiness of a leader were incredibly important. People followed Ignatius because they trusted him. They believed he was genuinely connected to the teachings of the apostles who had come before him. This personal authority gave his words great weight when he spoke to his own church and, later, to churches across the Roman world. His position in Antioch placed him at the very heart of early Christianity's development. Antioch was a powerhouse of Christian thought and missionary work. It had a direct connection to the earliest days of the faith, with traditions linking it to the apostles Peter and Paul. As the leader of such an important church, Ignatius was not just a local figure. He was part of a network of church leaders across the empire who communicated and supported one another. His leadership in this major city prepared him for the larger role he was about to play. It was from this position of influence that he would soon become a leading voice for the entire Christian movement. Section 2. A church under pressure. The world of Ignatius was not a friendly one for Christians. The Roman Empire was generally tolerant of different religions, but it demanded one thing from everyone: loyalty to the emperor. This loyalty was often expressed through public rituals, such as offering a small pinch of incense to a statue of the emperor. For Christians, this was an act of idolatry they could not perform. They insisted on worshiping only their one God. This refusal made them seem stubborn, antisocial, and even rebellious to the Roman authorities. It marked them as a strange and suspicious group, separate from the rest of society and its traditions. This suspicion often led to open hostility and persecution. The persecution was not constant or empire-wide at this time. It was usually sporadic and local. A new governor might want to make a name for himself, or a local disaster might be blamed on the Christians for angering the traditional gods. When this happened, Christians could be arrested, tortured, and even executed. They lived with a constant low level of threat. This external pressure had a profound effect on the church. It forced them to be tightly knit and secretive. It also raised difficult questions. What should they do if a member denied the faith under torture? How should they view those who died for their beliefs? Inside the church, there were other pressures as well. The Christian community was not one single, unified body. It was a collection of small house churches scattered across cities. In a large city like Antioch, there would have been many such groups. These small communities often had their own leaders, teachers, and ways of doing things. While they all believed in Jesus, they sometimes disagreed on the details. How should they interpret his teachings? What did it mean that Jesus was both human and divine? These disagreements could lead to arguments and divisions, weakening the church from within at a time when it was already facing threats from without. This combination of external persecution and internal disagreement created a crisis. The church needed a way to hold itself together. It needed clear leadership and a shared understanding of its core beliefs. This was the challenge that faced bishops like Ignatius every single day. They had to be strong enough to stand up to Roman authorities, while also being wise enough to resolve disputes within their own communities. Their goal was to forge a single, unified church that could survive the pressures threatening to tear it apart. This urgent need for unity would become the central theme of Ignatius's life and work, shaping every letter he wrote. One of the biggest internal threats Ignatius faced was the rise of what he called heresies, or false teachings. These were not simply minor disagreements. They were different versions of Christianity that threatened to change the core of the faith. A major concern for Ignatius was a group of teachings we now call Docetism. The name comes from a Greek word that means to seem or to appear. Docetists believed that Jesus was a purely spiritual being. They taught that he only seemed to be human. They argued that a divine being could not possibly have a real physical body, suffer real pain, or die a real death on a cross. For Ignatius, this idea was extremely dangerous. If Jesus was not truly human, then his life, death, and resurrection had no real meaning for humanity. If he did not have a real body, then the Christian practice of baptism and water, the Eucharist, sharing real bread and wine, would be pointless. Ignatius insisted that Jesus was fully human and fully divine. He was truly born, he did eat and drink, he was truly persecuted under Pontius Pilate, he was truly crucified and died. This emphasis on the physical reality of Christ's life was not an abstract point. It was essential to the entire foundation of the Christian faith as Ignatius understood it. Another group that worried Ignatius were Christians who wanted to remain too closely tied to Jewish laws and customs. These teachers, sometimes called Judaizers, insisted that to be a good Christian, one must also observe parts of the Mosaic law, such as dietary rules, the Sabbath on Saturday. Ignatius saw this as a step backward. While he respected the Jewish scriptures as the foundation of Christianity, he believed that the coming of Christ had created a new covenant. He argued that Christianity was a distinct faith, not just a sect of Judaism. He urged believers to live according to the Lord's Day, meaning Sunday, the day of the resurrection, rather than the Jewish Sabbath. These conflicts were not just theological debates for scholars. They had real-world consequences for the unity of the church. When different teachers came into a city, they could split the community into factions. One group might follow a Docetic teacher, another followed a Judaizing teacher, a third tried to remain loyal to the bishop. This created confusion, bitterness, and division. Ignatius saw that these internal fights made the church weak and vulnerable. It distracted them from their mission and made them an easy target for their persecutors. This is why Ignatius became such a passionate and forceful advocate for unity, making him a leading voice against these emerging challenges. Table of Contents. Part 3. Act 2. The Letters. Main Themes. Section 1. The Call for Unity. Section 2. Obey your bishop. Section 3. The Reality of Christ. Section 4. The Medicine of Immortality.